Hi, Yomi Lover here. Just doing a review on the Rings of Power right now. It's a show that's everyone's watching right now, but this is a rant, so I'm just gonna wing it. Let's see. There were a few things in that show that I didn't like. For one thing, towards the end of the show, the latest episode shows Gladriel, girl boss, having like shipping with Sauron, and that's a no bueno. I don't like that. That never happened in any of the Silmarillion chapters or anything like that. So if anybody's trying to go in there into the books and be like, oh, like they were totally a thing, they were a couple at one point, everyone's gonna stop you and tell you to go read the book, you idiot. Like, they're gonna call you a moron for not reading the books in first place, because I guarantee you, if you go to the books, you will have a genuinely better time than watching this damn show. Okay, because the show, all it does is make me angry and pissed off, and I'm just like, I was cheated. So on my other channel, I mentioned that if they did anything to my boy, Durin, I would be upset. Well, they did do something to my boy Durin, and my boy Durin has a dwarf wife now. But, like, Tolkien clearly says in his lore, in his writing, that dwarf women all had beards. And if you did find a dwarf woman, you were, like, lucky, because they were, like, few and far between. So, it's just like, why are there dwarf women in my show? I don't believe that. I don't believe they exist. And if I don't believe in them, they don't exist. Okay? So, let's see. What else was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. There is a few things that are going on with Celebrimbor and Elrond that were just kind of, like, drawn out. Like, all the show has to say on Elrond, I thought Elrond's character was pretty good. It was okay. It was fine. It wasn't, like, blow me away. Acting is amazing. Like, that's 4 stars out of 5. It wasn't, like, blow me away great acting, but it was okay. But, the one thing that I don't like about the show is that I've seen better fan art to Tolkien's lore than this show. This show, like, completely ignores Tolkien's words and just decides to do its own thing, which everybody was pissed off about. Like, nobody liked that. No one liked the fact that the show was derailing and just, like, making Sauron and Galadriel a couple. That was just, what are you doing, show? Like, what about her husband? Her husband is just like, she just forgets about him, like, oh, okay, what husband? I don't know who you're talking about. What husband? I don't know what you're talking about. Me and Sauron here, we're a thing. Like, we're an item. So everybody was, like, upset about that. That didn't please anybody. Everybody's just like, oh, now the fangirls are creaming their pants over this Sauron and Glad. Will they? Won't they? I can change him. Oh, the drama. No one cares about that. No one gives a shit, and nobody wants to see that. They want to see more Rings of Power, and, oh yeah, another thing that this show does that pisses me off is I don't see Sauron helping with the rings at all. Like, he was a big part in helping forming the Rings of Power in the Silmarillion. And I read the entire Silmarillion. That book is amazing. It's great. I highly recommend it. It's affordable to anybody who's like, oh, well, I don't read a lot. I don't look at pages and flip through books and stuff. I'm not a nerd. Yeah, well, just trust me on this. You're gonna want to go buy the Silmarillion for this. It's a good book. It's a good read. But most of all, I'm just, like, pissed off that they didn't include Sauron's involvement in... Oh, everybody knows that Halbrand is Sauron. Like, nobody is surprised by this. Everybody was calling it. They're like, oh, he seems to be interested in smithing and blacksmithing in Numenor. The fall of Numenor has not happened yet, but Sauron has a place and a part to play in the fall of Numenor. But Halbrand is totally Sauron, so nobody's surprised by this. Nobody cares. But everybody was pissed off that he doesn't have his fair form, like, because Sauron takes a form... He takes a few forms in Silmarillion, actually. Like, in Beren and Luthien, he takes the form of a werewolf, and he, pretty much captures Beren and does stuff, like, sort of, like, torturing while Luthien is away. But, they save him eventually. I'm not gonna spoil that, because, go read that book. It's actually really good, the Silmarillion and Beren and Luthien. Like, you'll have a good time. I also highly recommend Tolkien's The Children of Húrin. And The Children of Húrin is one of the best books I've ever read. But I'm not talking about those books right now. I'm talking about the show that shows girl boss Galadriel going around swinging a sword and, ruining her character and all this stuff. From ancient sorceress to enchantress to girl boss nobody likes. So it's uneven trade. I don't like how they did a character assassination. And then there's the wizard. I was pissed off that they didn't choose to make the wizard the blue wizard from the Silmarillion. That pissed me off. They just made him Gandalf, and I'm just like, no, this cannot be a Gandalf origin story. No, this is not his origin story. If it is, shoot me in the head. Shoot me in the head right now, because I cannot take this. I cannot take this character assassination. First, you take my boy Durin, you give him a dwarf wife. I mean, nothing wrong with dwarf wives. I'm just like, but that's not in the story, and it's not written in the book. So, characters that were written a certain way are being changed, and I don't like that. But I'm just like, nobody in the working on the show Rings of Power cares about what Tolkien has to say. I actually do care about what Tolkien has to say, so I'm just gonna say it. They shouldn't have gotten rid of the lore expert, the Tolkien lore expert who was just an old man who was just doing his job. But I'm just like, they did it anyways, because they're a bunch of a-holes that are just like, oh, diversity is our strength. No, good storytelling is our strength, not diverse. I mean, I'm kind of an idiot for saying, not diversity is our strength. I mean, you can be diverse in some aspects, but if you can't tell a good story, get lost or get out of here. Get good or get going. You know what I mean? It's like when you're playing a video game. If you don't know how to play the video game, get lost. Get lost and pack your bags. Just storytelling is kind of the same way, where if you're not good at storytelling, stop telling the story. Like, you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how you're saying. You're not starting with a synopsis that everybody could follow. So, let me see. What were other aspects of this show? Yeah, like, I've seen fan art that's way better and way more equipped to adapt Tolkien's lore than this show. And I'm just like, kind of, it's upsetting. Because I'm just like, the show does so much to just piss off anybody who's a hardcore Tolkien fan like me, and who read the books. They know the lore, and they know what it's supposed to look like in their head versus what we got in the show. So we don't get any of that cool stuff. The Fall of Numenor hasn't happened yet, so I'm interested to see how they're gonna do that in the show, but chances are a lot of people want to cancel this show because they're like, this show insults me, it made my grandma older, and it's making me age a few years because I'm so stressed out by how much I hate it. And I'm just like, oh god. Those are actual Tolkien fans, but I'm just like, it has nothing. Oh, by the way, the press for this show is hilarious. Like, they're calling everybody man babies or incels or racists. That's their defense for everything, for all their bad writing. Bad writing is now defended by calling somebody a racist, misogynist, man baby, incel, anything that you can think of under the sun. But that doesn't excuse the bad writing, because I'm a Tolkien fan and I'm just like, look, it has nothing to do with you making the characters black. Bad writing is bad writing. If you, like, okay, you could take a turd and change it to the color white for all I care, but it's still gonna be a turd. It's not good. Like, you can't change it. But this is Tolkien we're talking about. It's not a turd. So, yeah, I hate to use that analogy for Tolkien, but I'm just like, there was a lot of things to this lore that they're just excusing and dismissing with, well, if you don't like it, you're an incel, or you're a man baby. Well, I'm neither of those things, so I'm just gonna say I don't like the show, because it completely character assassinates a few people that we read about in these Tolkien books. And I'm just gonna say it right now, Tolkien didn't want his works adapted into film. He never did. He wanted his books to be kept for his children. And, I mean, am I a hypocrite for a big hypocrite for saying that he didn't want any of his books adapted to film. I mean, yeah, I kind of am, because, like, I like the trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy that they made by Peter Jackson, and he does a very good job. And I honestly think, like, here's the thing that I think. I think a theory that I have is the reason why they made, like, a bunch of race changes and, like, changing people to black, from white to black and stuff, is mostly because I blame Honest Trailers for this, because Honest Trailers had the gall to be like, oh, they come back whiter, and it's just like, what does that have to do with it? Do you care about the story? And they're just like, no, I'm just noticing the race and stuff, and I'm just like, well, do you care about it being a good story? Because obviously race doesn't have anything to do with it. It has everything to do with the story being timeless and you being able to rewatch these things over and over again. But they're just like, oh, I noticed this thing. So that's my theory for why they changed some characters from white to black, because they were just like, oh, we don't want to be seen as racist. You're seen as bad writers, not racist, but no one really, like, it didn't bother me, but it does kind of beg the question why they did it in the first place. Also, with a few things like Galadriel being involved in Numenor, she was never in Numenor in the Silmarillion, so I'm just gonna, break it to everybody, she had no involvement in that whatsoever. She was also not involved in forming the Rings of Power, she wasn't. She just knew about it because she's a sorceress. I mean, word spreads from mouth to mouth, and you just get that. But what else can I say about this show that really, really kind of peeved me? Oh god. What can I say? I think Galadriel is just unlikable. They don't like her. Like, I'm not saying they as in, like, everybody who's a Tolkien fan, they don't like her in this show, because she is written to be an obvious Mary Sue, and everybody's just like, whoever wrote this, like, somebody was just, like, writing the script, and they had, like, Mary Sue fantasies, and they were just like, oh, wouldn't it be great if, like, Galadriel and Sauron were, like, a thing before she got married to her husband? Whoever didn't check that person, they should fire that person, because it's just like, what is your Mary Sue fantasy doing in my epic fantasy lore of Tolkien? What is this doing here? This has no place here. Get lost. Get out of here. Like, you're fired. Just fire that person because it was a bad idea and it doesn't work. Also, there's a lot of things that kind of just like I was joking when I said that a leaf would wake up the Balrog, and sure enough, as soon as I said that, the leaf woke up the Balrog in the mountain that Durin was, like, mining and stuff. And it's just like, what? That's what wakes up the Balrog? You gotta be shitting me. You gotta be shitting me. That's what wakes up the Balrog. Okay, I'm done. I'm just guessing. I was just guessing. I was just, like, joking around, and then the show actually did it. Like, what? You gotta be kidding me. But anyways, what else was about, oh yeah, so, god, I'm just trying to think, I'm racking my brain for things to pick at this show. As far as Tolkien lore goes, yeah, the rings don't look very good. The rings kind of look like a pale comparison to Peter Jackson's rings that he presents, and it's just bad. Like, they do look like cheap costume jewelry. And I'm just thinking about it, and I'm just all, if they had Peter Jackson on this project, would he have done it this way, or would he have done it some other way, and paid attention really to the storytelling, and not the way this show looks? Like, I think they poured so much money into this show for it to fall short of having a good story. And also, like, there was no Queen of Numenor. That's just the show writers writing a queen in there. It's like, yes, queen. Yes, queen. Oh, slay. Slay, queen. Yeah, you. Well, your queen's blind now, so what does that do for the show? It does nothing, because we all know Numenor is gonna fall. Oh yeah, because we all read the books, so we know it's coming. It's just like... But it's just like, the show is such a spectacular car crash. You just gotta watch it to witness it, to see what they fuck up with. Like, it's like watching the highway, and you're watching a car, and the car is obviously going to crash. And you're just like, oh, what's that car gonna do next? I gotta watch out. But you're honestly pissed off because the car crashed in the first place, and you saw the guy making this mistake. It's like, don't go that way. Don't go that way. But they did it anyways, because they're a bad driver, and they they have shitty writing. So, oh yeah. What was I thinking? Like, in the beginning of the show, the whole part with the tree going ill and sick, yeah, that's not in the show either. They haven't mentioned any of the gods from... I mean, they have actually mentioned gods from the Silmarillion in this show. Like, few of them. Yavanna, Alway, let's see, Manwë. Manwë's my favorite, by the way. Lord of the Eagles, he's pretty good. Let me see. There's just so many things, like the Hidden City and Thingol, all those characters from the Silmarillion that I don't want them to fuck up, because they're just gonna take them and make them bland as shit, and no one's gonna like them. And it's just like, I've seen better fan art for the Silmarillion than this show, and the Third Age and the Rings of Power. And I'm such a Tolkien nerd, I got so many books on the Tolkien universe that it's not funny. It's not funny. I even have his unwritten book of lost works. And those are just for my enjoyment alone. But I highly recommend anybody who's listening to this to go out there and buy those books. Especially the Silmarillion. You're gonna have infinitely more satisfaction reading the Silmarillion than you are watching this show. I just, like... Here's the thing, I don't want them to cancel it, but it's not a good show. And it's just like, this is a train wreck, and you're just adding more cars to the train wreck. Actually, it's a car crash, not a train wreck. It's a car crash, and it already happened, and you're adding more cars to the car crash. Why are you doing that? Stop doing that. But, some people are just like, it is what it is, and it's too late now, we're out of the frying pan and into the fire, so to speak. Or out of the fryer and into the frying pan. I don't know, that's a saying from The Hobbit. But, you know, this show is just like... Oh yeah, some of the things that were kind of just like... They really are just member berries. Like, remember Gandalf? Follow your nose. Remember, that fight in the Two Towers? Oh... And we have a mini little fight in here, too. It wasn't as good, but I do admit that, I mean, I don't know, was Mordor formed before in the books? Like, clearly the Shadowlands were already formed, but, I'm not sure if that's, like, somebody check me on that, if that is written in Tolkien's lore, because they say that, like... In this show, Mordor gets formed, and I'm just all... Was that in the books already? I'm pretty sure Mordor was already formed, but they're not gonna... I mean, somebody check me on that. Please do that, because it's been a while since I've read the Silmarillion. And I'm just thinking about it, and if they didn't put so much emphasis on making Galadriel a Mary Sue, maybe people would like her more. It's just like... Just make her... Look, Galadriel is already badass being a sorceress, okay? She can read the future and do magic on the side. That's pretty powerful. You gotta be... That's basically saying she's already so OP that she doesn't need to lift a sword to fight. She can just, like... She could just use her elven magic to suspend a surprise attack on somebody. So it's just like, you don't need to make her like freaking you don't need to make her like Legolas here, or any, like, you don't need to make her like Aragorn's wife, where she's just like already a fighter elf. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much in the movies, but it's just like, that's not the way her character's written. And a lot of people complain about that, but I'm just like... Okay, I see that they're trying to go for a Legolas female here, but it's just like, Oh yeah, and another defense for making Gladriel a bad Mary Sue was people making her like Eowyn, and Eowyn, okay, Eowyn is, it's not a surprise because here's the thing, Tolkien already wrote Aragorn's wife to be like that, and it's just like, she's already a badass with a sword, but you don't need to go on and be like, oh, well, men would be surprised by this. No, they're not surprised. They're Tolkien experts. They know that he wrote Eowyn to be like that, but that's because she's written to be like that, not because they changed anything about her. So, it's just like, there's no checkmate there. There's no, checkmate or anything like that. And it's just like, the show just goes on to excuse the bad writing by calling its audience man babies and incels and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, can't you just admit that you made a subpar show that doesn't follow the Tolkien lore and you're trying to bait shippers with this whole Galadriel and Sauron thing? It's not a thing. Stop trying to make it a thing. It's never going to be a thing. Okay? We all know she gets together with her husband. Just stop trying to make it a thing. It's like, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. And, I mean, I'm just like, I'm not blown away by this show because I'm just like, look, if you've never read a Tolkien novel, you're probably gonna love this show. You're probably gonna squee every time you see Sauron and Galadriel on screen together and them trying to ship them. But as for me, somebody who's actually read the lore and actually cares about Tolkien's writing, I'm not gonna squee. I'm gonna go to the books again and read those, and I'm probably gonna go back to the movies again and watch those. Because, call it what you will, Peter Jackson did his work. He did his job to stay true to Tolkien's vision. And we thank him for it. To this day, he is a legend. So, it's just like, I'm probably not gonna watch any more of the show, because this season has been so... It's just like, oh my god, stop, girl boss. We get it, okay? We get it, girl boss Galadriel. You really want to be involved in making the rings, but that wasn't written in your character. Okay? You were not involved in the rings and making them and making sure that they exist. That was supposed to be Sauron and Celebrimbor, and nobody is buying this, that you're involved in every little thing, every little aspect. And basically it makes Galadriel look like the bad guy because she's involved in Middle-earth having Sauron again. So the writing there just ensures that, she actually has an involvement in making the big bad come into existence again. Great job there, writers. Except, I'm just like, in the movies, in the trilogy, she doesn't have any involvement in bringing back Sauron. They just wanted a girl boss character that's gonna be unlikable and ultimately give us the big bad, which is kind of her fault. And it's just like, this is character assassination. This isn't character improvement. And everybody's like, my girl Galadriel, she slays. Your girl Galadriel got involved in making Sauron happen again. And, it's kind of her fault. But let's not pay attention to that. Let's just pay attention to the fact that she's a girl boss. Yes, queen, slay. But it's just like, this is character assassination. And honestly, the books had it right. And they're just not going to admit that they took a big uh-oh on that. So that's my, two cents in for the Rings of Power. The Rings of Power, everybody makes fun of them. They're like, oh lordy, dem Rings of Power. I'm just like, I'm still bothered by the fact that there are female dwarves. I said, it was canon, straight up, that Gimli said, there are no dwarf women. There are no dwarf women. And it's just a joke, but he said it was ridiculous because there actually are dwarf women. So, I caught myself on that one. It's just like, but, it's still just weird to see. It's just like, what the heck did they do to Durin? My boy Durin, he's tethered to a wife now. Great. I'm just like, no, it's not great. I'm just like, I love the Lay of Durin. The song that's dedicated to him, that's pretty good. I recommend going to go listen to that. The Tolkien Ensemble. If anybody hasn't listened to it, go listen to it right now. I love that ensemble to death, and it's great. Like, if you're looking for epic music, go listen to that. And you'll get so much from just the music alone. You'll just be mystified. Like, you could probably imagine another world just by listening to it and be enthralled by that. So I highly recommend going to go listen to it. This show, if you watch it and you're a hardcore Tolkien fan, it's probably gonna upset you. Unless, of course, you're like, oh, well, it's a show. It's not gonna be perfect for, audiences. No, it's not. I mean, what show isn't? But it's just like, it's really upsetting. Like, they really got rid of the Tolkien expert, and I think that was their first mistake, getting rid of him in light of hiring a diversity expert. And I'm just like, why did you keep this person and you got rid of that guy? And it's just like, you don't care about your writing, you care more about hitting a quota of, we're diverse. Like, diversity is our... Like, okay... I know that there's like a saying out there, but here's the thing. If it's not good writing, it's not good writing, okay? Diversity is not gonna save a bad writing in show. It's not gonna save bad writing in a show. It's gonna just pay more attention to it. People are gonna zero in on some ridiculous, like, ridiculous writing that was never meant to be. So, I highly recommend bringing back that lore expert, because he will give you the true vision of Tolkien, and probably show you a thing or two about what nerds think in fantasy, because fantasy is supposed to be an escape from all this stuff that's supposed to be like, it's supposed to be, like, when somebody thinks fantasy, they don't think, oh, girl boss, bossing me around all the time and making me feel like I'm married to a Karen. They don't think of that. They think epic stories of heroes and villains and, you know, highbrow fantasy of dragons and witches and wizards and things that are not in real life. They think of stuff like that. And I think that's what Game of Thrones is doing right now, because it's allowing for that escapism that most of us crave in our day-to-day lives. And Tolkien's stories are kind of an escapism, but yes, they reflect a time period that is lost to us now, like World War I and World War problems that he faced in his life when he was in the war. And we see a lot of, like, Tolkien's PTSD throughout the Tolkien lore, so I think it's missing that quality and that flavor, and that kind of circumstance that made the books readable and digestible to people, because these are timeless stories, and Tolkien wrote them to be timeless for a reason. So, I think it's missing those aspects, because the show, it doesn't have a lot of fantasy aspects. The only fantasy thing I've seen is probably the Balrog, and that's it. Like, Tolkien's world is more expressive than that. There are things in Tolkien's world that will amaze you and, you know, make you feel this small as a human being. Like, the Valinor, the Valar, those things make you feel like it's a complete world. Giant spiders like Ungoliant, and, gosh, elves that feel ethereal and otherworldly, hidden cities, eagles, things like that. And the show barely gives us any of that. It just gives us, you know, girl boss power. I'm just feeling browbeaten by this whole girl boss power that I have lost interest in the show entirely, because it's not giving me enough fantasy. So, they're trying to make it like Game of Thrones. Don't be Game of Thrones. Be Tolkien. Tolkien fans are not dumb. They've obviously dedicated a lot to the lore, and in adapting it and showing it off in their fan art, that they put so much care and love into it, you could just, you know, escape into the art. But I'm just, like, saying right now, the show is probably not for me. I gave it a shot, and honestly, it was so boring, I wouldn't rewatch it again, and I would probably just rewatch the trilogy movies. Hell, I'd even watch The Hobbit, even though it does... Oh yeah, there was one thing that this show did good. It gave us back orcs that were done with makeup, not CGI. So that's the one thing the Hobbit movies pissed me off doing, because they gave us CGI orc fest, and it was a sludge fest. and it didn't have any heart or spirit, as like with makeup, as makeup kind of gives you in the special effects area with the orcs and the urukai and all that stuff. It gave us that, so good job, show. The one thing you did right was give us orcs with makeup, human makeup, not just CGI sludge. So that was pretty good. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on the Rings of Power. If you watch it, yeah, I guess you'll watch it, but I highly recommend reading the Silmarillion. You will get so much more enjoyment from that, or listening to it. There's so many things, so many, people like Christopher Lee, singing in the ensemble, or readings by other people. I highly recommend going to those. So that's it for my, rant on the Rings of Power. Take care and have a great day.